My friends, this is surreal. Just when the Detroit Lions appeared to be building momentum toward another championship run, an unexpected controversy has emerged that could change everything. Terrion Arnold is now at the center of a rapidly developing situation, and the fallout could have major consequences for both the young cornerback and the Lions defense, counting on him to play a crucial role this season. According to the information discussed in the report, Terrion Arnold has reportedly been arrested and is facing multiple felony charges connected to an alleged armed robbery case that took place earlier in the offseason in Tampa, Florida. The allegations are extremely serious. The report states that Arnold is facing 4 counts of kidnapping and 4 counts of armed robbery, charges that could potentially carry life-altering consequences if proven in court. What makes this story even more significant is that it comes after previous allegations had already connected Arnold to the incident months ago. At that time, there had been no arrest and no formal charges announced. Many people questioned whether the situation would eventually lead to legal action. Now, according to the report, that legal action has arrived. The details mentioned are deeply troubling. Investigators reportedly connected Arnold and several other individuals to the incident through evidence gathered during the investigation. The report claims that authorities discovered communications involving multiple defendants, and that investigators believe directions were being given during the alleged events. According to the information presented, additional individuals later arrived at the apartment connected to the case while the alleged assault was still occurring. The report further states that personal property belonging to victims was allegedly taken during the incident. These allegations form the foundation of the charges now being reported against Arnold and others involved. As news of the arrest spread, the Detroit Lions issued a brief statement acknowledging the legal situation. According to the report, the organization stated that it is aware of the matter, but would not comment further out of respect for the ongoing legal process. That response is not surprising. Organizations typically remain cautious when serious legal proceedings are underway. However, from a football perspective, the questions immediately begin to pile up. Terrion Arnold entered Detroit with significant expectations. As a young cornerback, he was viewed as an important part of the Lions' future defensive plans. The organization invested heavily in him, expecting him to develop into a long-term contributor in the secondary. Now, instead of conversations about training camp, competition, and player development, the discussion has shifted entirely toward legal issues and uncertainty. The report strongly suggests that Arnold's future with the franchise is in jeopardy. While no official football decision is detailed beyond the team's statement, the seriousness of the allegations has naturally led many observers to question whether he will ever play another down for Detroit. Beyond football, there is also the human side of the story. The report repeatedly emphasizes the potential consequences of decisions made off the field. The discussion focuses on how quickly circumstances can change when individuals find themselves involved in situations that carry major legal implications. What should have been a period of preparation for another NFL season has instead become a period dominated by investigations, charges, and uncertainty. For Lions fans, the situation is difficult to process. Just a short time ago, the focus was on improving the roster, strengthening the defense, and building toward another competitive season. Now, one of the team's young defensive players finds himself at the center of a developing legal case that could have enormous consequences. The football implications are also beginning to emerge. If Arnold is ultimately unavailable, Detroit would be forced to rely on other players in the cornerback room. The report specifically mentions that the Lions have other options in the secondary and could potentially look for additional depth if necessary. Those discussions, however, remain secondary to the much larger issue currently unfolding. At this stage, many questions remain unanswered. The legal process is still ahead, and the case will ultimately determine what happens next. What is clear from the report is that this situation has escalated dramatically from where it stood earlier in the offseason. What began as allegations has now turned into arrests and multiple felony charges, creating one of the biggest stories surrounding the Detroit Lions this year. And that leads to the question every Lions fan is asking right now. If these developments continue to move in the direction outlined in the report, what do you think the future holds for Terrion Arnold and the Detroit Lions? The biggest challenge for the Detroit Lions now is figuring out how to move forward from a situation that nobody expected to dominate the offseason. When a team is preparing for training camp, the focus is usually on roster battles, player development, and championship aspirations. Instead, the conversation surrounding Detroit has suddenly become centered on one of the most serious off-field situations imaginable. From a roster standpoint, the impact could be immediate. Terrion Arnold was expected to be part of the Lions' plans in the secondary. Whether fans believed he was progressing exactly as expected or not, there is no question that the the organization invested valuable draft capital in bringing him to Detroit. Losing a young player under these circumstances is completely different from losing someone because of injury or normal roster movement. This creates uncertainty that no team can truly prepare for. The report points out that the Lions may need to look elsewhere for cornerback depth. That possibility becomes increasingly important when considering how competitive the NFC has become. Detroit's goals have not changed. This is a team that expects to compete at a high level. The expectations inside the organization remain significant, and every roster spot matters when you're trying to contend. What makes this story particularly frustrating for many fans is the contrast between opportunity and consequence. NFL players spend their entire lives working toward reaching the league. The journey is incredibly difficult. Thousands of athletes dream of making it to the NFL, but only a small percentage ever get that opportunity. Once a player reaches that level, the expectation is that he will protect that opportunity at all costs. According to the discussion in the report, that is exactly why this situation feels so shocking. The potential consequences being discussed go far beyond football. This is no longer about interceptions, coverage grades, or depth charts. This is about a legal process that could determine the direction of a young man's entire future. The report repeatedly emphasizes the severity of the allegations and the amount of evidence investigators reportedly gathered during the investigation. If authorities believed there was not enough evidence, they would not have moved forward with charges of this magnitude. That reality is why so many people are taking this situation extremely seriously. For the Lions organization, the timing could not be worse. Teams across the league are trying to build momentum heading toward the season. Detroit should be talking about defensive improvements, new additions, and the next step in their pursuit of a championship. Instead, headlines are being dominated by a legal case involving a player who was expected to contribute on the field. Another important aspect of this story is the reaction from fans. Many supporters initially hoped the earlier allegations would not develop into something larger. When no arrests occurred at the beginning of the investigation, there was speculation that the situation might eventually fade away. According to the report, that clearly did not happen. Instead, the case continued to develop behind the scenes until the reported arrests and charges became public. Now the focus shifts to what comes next. The legal process will have to play out. Investigations, court proceedings, and additional developments could take time. During that period, the Lions will likely continue preparing for the season while simultaneously dealing with questions surrounding Arnold's future. The report also highlights a broader lesson about decision-making and accountability. Professional athletes live under a spotlight that few people can fully understand. Every action carries consequences, and every decision can have long-term effects. In today's world, where communication, technology, and digital records can create extensive evidence trails, situations like this can quickly become impossible to escape. For Detroit fans, there is a sense of disappointment because this was supposed to be a story about football. It was supposed to be about a young player continuing his development and helping the team chase its goals. Instead, the conversation has become about allegations, charges, and uncertainty. As things stand, there are still many unanswered questions, but one thing is clear. This story has already become one of the most significant offseason developments affecting the Detroit Lions. The organization now faces the difficult task of moving forward while the legal process unfolds, and fans will be watching closely to see how everything develops in the weeks and months ahead. No matter where this situation ultimately leads, it serves as a reminder that talent alone is never enough. Decisions away from the field can change everything in an instant. The ramifications for the Detroit Lions could extend far beyond simply replacing one player on the depth chart. When a team invests heavily in a young talent, the expectation is that player will become part of the foundation for years to come. The report makes it clear that what is happening now threatens to completely change that trajectory. One of the biggest questions moving forward is how the Lions front office will respond if additional developments emerge. The organization has built a reputation for emphasizing culture, accountability, and team-first attitudes. Those principles have been a major part of Detroit's rise over the last several seasons. Because of that, situations involving serious off-field issues naturally attract even more attention. The report suggests that many people already view Arnold's future in Detroit as being in serious jeopardy. Whether that ultimately becomes reality remains to be seen, but it is easy to understand why the discussion has shifted in that direction. Teams can work through injuries, teams can overcome poor performances. What becomes much more difficult is dealing with situations that involve major legal complications. For the players currently inside the Lions locker room, this story creates an entirely different challenge. Every team wants to keep its focus on football. Coaches want players concentrating on assignments, competition, and preparation. Stories like this create distractions that organizations would much rather avoid. Even if players are not directly involved, questions begin to surface everywhere. Reporters ask about it, fans discuss it, analysts debate it. Suddenly, a situation involving one player becomes a topic surrounding the entire franchise. At the same time, Detroit still has a season to prepare for. Opponents are not going to slow down because of off-field issues. The Lions still have championship expectations. The coaching staff still has work to do. The defense still needs to be ready when the season arrives. That means the organization will likely have to balance two realities at once, dealing with the fallout from this developing story while continuing to build toward its goals on the field. The report also raises an interesting point regarding how quickly circumstances can change in professional sports. One moment, discussions are centered around potential growth, future contracts, and long-term roles within a team. The next moment, everything becomes uncertain. Careers that appear stable can suddenly face enormous obstacles. For many fans, that may be the most difficult part to understand. The opportunity to play in the NFL is something most athletes spend their entire lives pursuing. Reaching that level requires talent, discipline, sacrifice, and years of dedication. That is why stories involving major off-field allegations often leave supporters asking the same question: why risk everything? According to the report, investigators reportedly uncovered evidence that played a significant role in bringing the case to this point. Those developments transformed what many initially viewed as allegations into a much more serious situation. As the legal process continues, attention will remain focused on what information emerges next and how the case progresses. Meanwhile, Detroit's secondary could be facing significant changes. The report mentions that the Lions have other players available and could explore additional options if necessary. While no single move can completely erase the impact of losing a player who was expected to contribute, NFL teams are constantly forced to adapt. Successful organizations find ways to respond when unexpected challenges arise. What makes this story particularly notable is that it combines football consequences with much larger personal consequences. The report repeatedly emphasizes that